Chapter 8. Edges We Don't Speak Of. Alara. The library had always been her sanctuary. Tucked between tall bookshelves and dust-laced spines, Alara found the quiet that the world denied her. A place where she didn't have to be cold or unreadable. She could just be, even if no one noticed. Today, though, that peace flickered under the weight of footsteps. She didn't look up at first, fingers still tracing the corner of the history book she wasn't really reading. But her body tensed instinctively, like it knew before her mind caught up. Aiden. He was walking with Kieran again. Laughing. That soft, low laugh that once melted walls. But it was stiffer now, guarded, too aware of who might be watching. Who he might be watching. Her heart, traitor that it was, noticed him immediately. The slight crease in his brow. The way his hands fidgeted even while pretending calm. How his eyes searched the room like they didn't want to, but had to. She didn't let herself react. Just turned another page. Kieran's voice rose. You're coming Saturday, right? Aiden hesitated. Maybe. Alara could feel his gaze on her now, heavy and sharp. Her fingers froze on the page. Kieran followed his line of sight and smiled softly. You should. She'll be there. There. So that was it. She was a she, now. Not Alara. Not the girl he once looked at like she was made of something rare. Not the girl he had left in that room like a dropped memory. She stood up, calm as stone, and walked right past them without a glance. But she felt it, Aiden's stare like a storm cloud pressing against her back. Aiden. She didn't even look at him. And that, it burned. It shouldn't have. Not after all this time. Not after the walls she built so deliberately high and perfect. But something inside Aiden cracked when Alara brushed past like he was just air. Kieran nudged him. You alright? Aiden didn't answer. Because how could he explain the knot in his chest? The one that tightened every time he saw her sitting beside Kieran, laughing, soft and easy, in a way she never did with him. It was stupid. He knew she wasn't with Kieran. The guy had a fiancé. They were just close. But it was the closeness that hurt. That she could give someone else what she used to almost give him. He saw the way Kieran looked at her sometimes, not in a romantic way, but protective. Safe. And Aiden hated it, because he had never been a safe place for her. He was the storm. The one who said too much. The one who ran. The one who ruined it before it even started. That night came back in flashes, uninvited. Her voice in the art room, you don't have to be who they expect. The way her eyes had held his, like she saw straight through the performance. And how he'd panicked. How he'd left. Alara. Kieran waved goodbye as she shut her locker. You sure you're okay? He asked, his fiancé's call waiting on his phone. I'm fine, she said with a practiced smile. But her chest ached in that old, familiar way. Because she had seen it in Aiden's eyes. The conflict. The pull. She hated how she still noticed. 2 years had passed since that locked room. Since the way her heart had foolishly cracked open like a page of her sketchbook. Since she'd whispered a piece of her soul to the one person who didn't deserve it, and he'd walked away. She shouldn't feel anything now. Shouldn't care if he laughed with someone else, or if his eyes lingered on her longer than necessary. But she did, and worse, a part of her still longed. Not for the Aiden who smiled for crowds. But for the boy who once looked tired and real beneath afternoon sunlight, whispering secrets he wasn't supposed to tell. Aiden, late at night. Sleep didn't come easy anymore. When it did, it came stained with her. He'd see her, not the current version with sharp eyes and perfect posture, but the Alara from before. Glasses slipping down her nose. Sketchbook in hand. Sitting under a beam of golden light, as if the world had tried to hide her, and failed. In one dream, he touched her hand, just barely. In another, she leaned into his chest, breath soft against his neck. In another, she looked up at him with tears in her eyes and whispered, "Why didn't you stay?" He woke up drenched in guilt. And something else. Something that scared him more than anything. Longing. Alara. She almost smiled when she saw him flinch during class. Almost. He wasn't sleeping well. She could tell by the dark circles he tried to hide, the way he stared out the window like something haunted him. Good. Maybe he deserved it. But even as she thought that, her chest tightened. Because the truth was, she remembered too. The engagement wasn't real. They were children, promised in laughter by families who barely stayed in touch. Then they moved. Then she changed. Then he changed. And now, whatever it had been between them, it was broken. Wasn't it? But still she sketched him sometimes in the corners of her notebooks. Not the polished Aiden, but the one from the art room. The one who looked so lonely. And maybe that was the cruelest part. That even now, a piece of her still waited for the boy who never came back. Chapter 9. The Fracture Beneath the Mask. Aiden. POV. If there was a hell crafted specifically for emotional torture, it had Alara in it. Not the girl he remembered from that art room years ago, but the one she'd become. Indifferent. Composed. Unreachable. It had been weeks since she'd stepped back into his world, and yet, not a day passed without her haunting it. She wasn't doing anything, really. Just existing. But that was enough. Alara had become a walking contradiction, distant and cold, yet constantly tugging at something buried in his chest. Her laughter was rare but sharp when it came, her words clipped and polite, her gaze always 2 degrees colder than the room. Aiden watched her from the back of the classroom during homeroom, his fingers drumming absently against his desk as she sat across the room, head bowed over her notes. She didn't even glance his way. She never did anymore. Not since that day. Not since the door opened and he walked out of that room like he hadn't just laid a piece of himself bare in front of her. Like she hadn't seen him, really seen him, for the first time. God. He had been so stupid. Why had he said all that? Why had he let her in, even for a breath? And now she was here, beautiful and unbothered, glasses gone, posture regal, every inch of her transformed into this untouchable version of herself. It messed with his head. Especially since, as of last week, they'd been assigned to the same team for the school's annual Scholar Bowl. An academic competition that somehow required them to spend 3 hours a day together for 2 weeks. Aiden had laughed when he first heard about it. Then he saw her name on the list. And the laugh turned to ash in his throat. Alara. POV. She was fine. Truly. Completely fine. The Alara from that art room, the girl with the shaky hands and too much hope, was dead and buried beneath polished boots and colder eyes. She had let herself feel once. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, someone like Aiden could look at her and not see through her. And look where that had gotten her. So when the team assignments were announced, and his name was read beside hers, Alara didn't flinch. She didn't look his way. Didn't even blink. He could burn in the inferno of his own silence for all she cared. She'd spent 2 years rebuilding herself. Brick by brick, bone by bone. She wouldn't crumble now. 2 days before the Scholar Bowl. The library was too quiet. 4 students sat around the large table. Aiden, Alara, Sasha, the overachiever, and Kieran, the transfer student with sharp wit and an even sharper fiancé who everyone wanted to know more about. Kieran was cracking a joke. Sasha was correcting his grammar. Aiden was pretending not to stare. And Alara was, ice. Poised. Unreadable, but far too aware of the gaze that occasionally burned into the side of her face. Let's assign presentation parts, Sasha said, shuffling note cards. Aiden, you can handle the historical segment. Alara, you're clearly the strongest in logic puzzles. Kieran. I want to do the opening, Aiden interrupted suddenly. Sasha blinked. Alara looked up, slowly. Didn't you say public speaking wasn't your thing? Sasha asked, confused. It's not, but I changed my mind. His voice was calm, but his eyes were locked on Alara, daring her to challenge him. She didn't. She just tilted her head. If you're taking the opening, I'll take the closer. Seems only fair. Kieran smirked. Battle of the bookends. I dig it. Alara didn't smile. Neither did Aiden. But something simmered in the air, unsaid, sharp. Later that night, Aiden POV. He shouldn't have stayed up thinking about her. But he did, not intentionally. At first, it was the stress. The pressure. The need to prove he wasn't just a pretty face who got dragged into the bowl to boost popularity. But the moment he shut his eyes, she was there again. In the quiet between thoughts. Alara, leaning over a puzzle set, eyes narrowed. Alara, ignoring his jokes like they meant nothing. Alara, with soft hair she no longer wore in a braid, eyes that didn't shine for him anymore. Aiden tossed in bed, groaned, and threw an arm over his face. He hated this. He hated how much he remembered. That one time she'd handed him a crayon when they were 5. The way she cried the day he moved away and didn't say goodbye properly. He hadn't realized it was her, the girl from before, not until he'd overheard her name months ago, and everything had clicked. And now it was too late to fix anything. Too late to unsay what he hadn't said. Too late to unfeel. The day of the Scholar Bowl. The auditorium was buzzing. Bright lights. Nervous whispers. Teachers pacing. Students whispering from the sidelines. Alara stood backstage, fingers lightly tapping the cue cards in her hand. She felt calm, mostly, until Aiden walked in, wearing a blazer and that same stupid, unreadable expression that always made her feel like she was being X-rayed. Their eyes met. Something cracked in the silence. "You good?" he asked, voice low, surprisingly soft. She nodded. "I'm not the one who chokes under pressure." A small smirk. "Still got claws. You have no idea." The lights dimmed. The host called the team forward. And just like that, they were on stage, standing inches apart, smiling for a crowd, while underneath their skin, war drums pounded. When Aiden took the mic for the opening, his voice was steady. Confident. But every pause felt like a breath stolen from her lungs. Alara watched him speak, and for the first time in weeks, she let herself see him, really see him. He looked older, tired, but sharp, beautiful in that careless way that still hurt. She remembered a time when she'd believed he might be her first love. Now he was the echo of something almost real. When her turn came, she stepped forward, spine straight, eyes cold. And when their hands brushed briefly as she took the mic from him, neither flinched. But neither breathed, either. The audience clapped. The moment passed, but the air between them, it was no longer still. It had cracked open, and something dangerous was bleeding through. Dash dash dash. After the win, they stood alone behind the curtains while the others celebrated. Alara turned to leave first. "Wait," Aiden said, grabbing her wrist gently. She froze. "I need to know," he whispered. "Do you really not feel anything anymore?" She looked at him, long, unreadable. And then, with a voice like frost, "You were my first crush, Aiden. My only one. And you ran." He let go, like her skin had burned him. "You never even looked back," she added. Then she walked away, heels clicking, heart pounding. And behind her, Aiden stared at the space she'd left behind like it was a grave.